viewers. This is Shirley Youngblood with Spirit of Matter, and as you can see, this episode I'm going to try to make predictions about what does the chart of Slavoy Zizek looks like. And if you're wondering who this guy is, then I got a Wikipedia page opened up just so. So, this is a Slovenian philosopher, cultural theorist, and public intellectual. He is international director of Birkbeck Institution for Humanities in the University of London, visiting professor in NYU, and a senior researcher in University of Ljubljana, Department of Philosophy. His primary works on continental philosophy, Hegelianism, psychoanalysis and Marxism, and political theory, as well as film criticism and theology. So I have heard about Zizek. I have heard some of Zizek. I haven't run into him in my studies. And so I'm going to, right from the get go, learn about him with you and make predictions about what his chart looks like. What do I expect to see in his natal chart? And see which of those will bear out. This is a classic Spirit of Matter episode when I delve into natal charts that I don't know and try to understand what will I see in the chart. And then we are going to look at the chart. I'm going to see which of my predictions was correct, if any, and which of my prediction was incorrect. And also I'm going to analyze online the chart that I have just seen. This is one of my favorite type of episodes to do because I get to do everything on the spot and learn with you live, and I just like working in that way. So let us begin. So the first thing, even before I knew astrology, I liked when I studied political theory and theory and philosophy in general, I liked to get to know the theory of the person and the upbringing of the person, and the political context of the times that he was thinking in. Now, of course, when you do astrology, it's even more fun because you get to know which Pluto generation he was, which Saturn generation, where was his Saturn, where was Uranus, what Neptune generation. Um, so when I do thinkers and philosophers in Spirit of Matter, I always believe I will see something in the 12th house being brought to a public place, because the 12th house is where we connect with that which is beyond our realm. And of course, ninth house, which deals with our philosophy, religion, worldview, cognitive worldview, what we do know that we know or know that we don't know, and study, and of course, travel, the type of travel you do to learn more about yourself and learn more on other cultures and grow better as a human being. So it was considered the gate to God, okay, in Hellenistic astrology. So I would expect those to be in a public house, either in the third house, which deals with what we write every day, like a vlog or something that we do every day. Okay, for example, tend to do videos when I get in the zone. I tend to do videos almost every day, a couple of videos a day. I have a sun in the third house. Okay, so this is an everyday type of lunation. Or in the 11th house, where a person is a public figure and is known to the world for his ideology, for his goals or dreams or ideas that concern humanity. Okay, it doesn't have to be humanitarian, but ideas that concern humanity. And or the 10th house, which is basically what we are known for. Okay. For people who do this for a job, there may be a sixth house involved, because sixth house is also the work, the service that we give to the world. Okay, service that we give to others. Used to be the house of slaves as well, but also the house of pets, because pets used to do, some pets are working for us. Okay, it's, even on YouTube when we raise pets, we film them, we make shorts with them, and we basically make income with them that we later put also into our pets. But that was the relation with pets. Okay, pets were not just for joy, they were working animals. And of course the physical health, but this is less related to what we do here in Spirit of Matter in this particular episode. So, for those who have been reading, I'm going to begin to read that with you. Zizek was the most famous associate of the Ljubljana School of Psychoanalysis, a group of Slovenian academics working on German idealism, Lacanian psychoanalysis. I also have an episode on Lacan, on Jacques Lacan, that you can cruise through my channel. Ideology critique and media criticism. His breakthrough, this is interesting, was in 1989, which would be an interesting to look at if we had, for example, ZR, zodiac releasing, but also in transits and what was the zeitgeist of 1989. The sublime object of ideology. His first book in English, which was decisive in the introduction of the Ljubljana school thought to English-speaking audience. Okay, so he broke through from Slovenian to English-speaking audience. He has written over 50 books in multiple languages. His idiosyncratic style of public appearances, frequent magazine op-eds, and I don't know what op-eds is, and academic works. I'm cruising through, so I will get deeper into each one later. Characterized by use of obscene jokes and pop culture examples, as well as politically incorrect provocations, have gained him fame, controversy, and criticism both in and outside academia. So his style of serving his ideas was not politically correct, but you can infer from that that he was also not a ivory tower type of persona. And with that, I expect to see something in the 10th house or midheaven. Politically incorrectness, well, one could say, well, Uranus on the midheaven. But then, another person with Uranus on the, I'm in between watching the latest astrology podcast video, and Chris Brennan just mentioned he has Uranus on the midheaven. And it's not like Chris Brennan is not known for, not on the astrology podcast. If you go to Twitter, it's another zone, but is not known for politically incorrect jokes on the podcast. So that's not necessarily like a Uranus thing. But it is a streak of rebelliousness. It's probably something to do with the 10th house and 10th house ruler. And there is something about commoners, because this, obscene jokes, pop culture, politically incorrect stuff, there's a desire to be authentic, but also to be a part of the populistic. Okay, it's populistic is not just representation, but it also is the type of charisma that you see in a person who is of a high status, but speak like, the common people. Speaks like a person in the street, but with the status of a person of, high society, sozusagen. I know it's something with the 10th. I don't know to tell what with the 10th. It's not necessarily Uranus in the 10th. It can be, if I think about commoners, it can actually be something to do with Saturn, but maybe a more Aquarius type of Saturn. But then again, like the commoners, I don't really know. Obviously something to do with Mercury, because Mercury is also the style of speech. But what type of Mercury? Let's see. Let's delve deeper. 2012 Foreign Policy listed Zizek on its list of top 100 global thinkers, calling him a celebrity philosopher. So a celebrity philosopher. Okay. Now, when I see celebrity, I see two things. One, Neptune, either Neptune with midheaven, okay, that can create a viral effect about your midheaven, your status, what you're known for in the world. Many other things too, yes, life mission, but also what you're known for in the world, to go viral, to go like a mythic, like and this is celebrity. Another celebrity focus can be the 11th house, of course. Like I said, those public figures. But populism, and when I think populism, okay, I should not say that because that would be taken wrong. No, I should not say that because it's also incorrect a bit. So no, it's not. It's not that. No, no, no. Populism is like no. I need to delve deeper into populism, populistic leaders. No. Um, Elsewhere, he is dubbed the Elvis of cultural theory. Okay, so he's being compared with. This is definitely Neptunian. Why do I say, well, Neptunian, now, of course, with that, you could say something solar because it's a performer. So he might have a Sun Neptune, solar Neptune, Sol in Pisces, maybe Sun in Pisces, um, Mercury, like there's something coming in the 12th here for me because what he's channeling from the 12th house, the way I see it, is he knows how to communicate with the common person. How do I translate that into astrology? Um, what does he bring in for like the ruler of his, it can be the ruler of the 12th in the 11th. That's something because 11th is also like it's colleagues, but it's also the people en masse. So a leader, a populist leader, I would expect him to communicate, to have the ruler of the 12th in the 11th because he's leading, the people en masse, humanity, into something. And that Elvisness, it can be a Sun Neptune conjunction or a Sun Neptune or maybe Leo in the 12th house. If I think about another famous Leo in the 12th house, I think about Richard Feynman, and he was like a celebrity physicist. And you have Leo in the 12th house with the Sun in Taurus in the ninth and Mercury in the ninth in Taurus. I think about these types. So we could have like a Leo in the 12th, and then the Sun in the 11th, maybe in Pisces or something, or a Sun Neptune, a Sun Mercury Neptune, something like that. And then, well, if what would be his meter? Let's say that this hypothesis is true. So that would make the Taurus the ninth, and then the Gemini becomes. Gemini is also quite a people's person. If I think another, very prominent like Gemini, well, not exactly Gemini, but yes, well, no, I don't know. Gemini is also like a people's person, and that would make the ruler of his 10th Mercury, which is like he speaks for a living. But what would be there in the ninth? Because the ninth, the Taurus is also a type of, sort of a kind of, it can be commoners. And Taurus ruled by Venus. Well, it's interesting. Like, I don't know if that's a Venus. You can have like a Venus. I don't think it's like a Venus. I think it's more a Neptune on the midheaven. Or let's see. Let's go on. He was deemed the most dangerous philosopher in the West. Okay, why dangerous? Let's see. Danger. Okay, danger. Danger. Danger was feared. So when I see danger, I think about, instinctively it's like danger Pluto. He was feared. But it can also be Uranus, It can also be Uranus. Because Uranus is revolutionary, reactionary. And Uranus is also rebellious. Okay, so there's something with Uranus. But it's not necessarily Uranus on the midheaven. Or maybe something with Uranus Neptune. I don't know. Let's see. The leading Hegelian of our time, the foremost exponent of Lacanian theory. So he's been associated with Hegel, with Lacan. And Lacan was interesting. If you remember my episode about Lacan, the way Lacan received patients, I think was he called psychoanalysis by then? I think was he still psychoanalyst? I think so. So he would receive the way he would like the way he would receive patients is pretty much the way I do Spirit of Matter episodes, but with a patient coming in. So he would have like his barber coming to do his hair and people coming in, going out while he speak with his patient. And the way he talked about this, he saw that as first of all breaking the illusion that you can have like the perfect sterile caregiving um, and breaking in and putting it in the air, allowing the existential crisis to be in the room, but also paying attention to the little things. Had some very good placements. Paying attention to the little things that happen in the common day, everyday interactions. Okay, then that's the thing about Lacan. Well, from Hegel, I get more like it's Hegel talked about that dialectic stuff. As much as I remember, I don't know. But the Lacan one got me because Lacan he was placing emphasis on the mundane and also on not having a pose. Okay, so basically, when I come to think about it, you could have like a sun in Taurus, because sun in Taurus can also be about not. It can sun in Taurus can go both ways. It can go either about having a pose or having a certain sort of style that is very refined, very Venusian, very diplomatic, very this, very that, or the lack of pose, like not having a pose, not one, being very aware of and having an aesthetic, okay, Venusian, an aesthetic that is lacking aesthetics, okay, an aesthetic that is of the common. Life and career. Oh, anything more here? So a lot of superlatives around him. A journal of the International Journal of Zizek Studies was founded by Professor David J. Gunkel and Paul A. Tyler to engage with his work. I have no idea who these guys are. Okay. But for sure they're interesting. But we are going to focus on Zizek now. So, born into a middle-class family, his father, José Zizek, was an economist and civil servant from the region of Prekmurje, I hope I pronounced this correctly, in East Slovenia. So, educated, the father was educated, his mother, Vesna, was interesting name, Vesna. Okay, interesting name. A native of Gorica Hills in the Slovenian littoral, was an accountant. Okay, both his parents dealt with economy. Okay, the mother was an applied economy. Okay, accountant. In a state enterprise, so she carried the high position, and the father was an economist. So he grew up being very much aware of the mundane world, okay, with how economy works, both in theory and in praxis. Okay, if his mother was an accountant in a large enterprise, she was probably exposed to many things about the organization. She was probably a person who had the vision of an organization because she had to do accountants for big organizations. And his father from the more theoretical side of how economy. So he could have absorbed what economy was in theory and in praxis. And I would wonder what the sun and moon would be like, because both of them deal with economy, but from very different aspects. Um, and and he gets both the theory, the philosophy, theorizing, talking about it, and the actual hands-on experience of economy, which will probably affect how he thinks about the world. But this also puts his theory to practice. And theory to practice, I think of it as a couple of things. First of all, ninth house, third house. Okay, there's some good equilibrium between the ninth house, third house. Can also be an opposition there between certain planets, something in the ninth house, something in the third house. Okay, and opposition can also give you, it can be even rau quieto, but I'm not sure. Okay, I'm not sure. Um, and it is also Jupiter Mercury. Jupiter is our life philosophy, the instinct to do good, the theory. Mercury, it's communication. It's a type of communication when you have when you sign a contract, when you sign an agreement. Okay, um, and when those two come together, then you have the people call it the higher mind and lower. I don't know, higher mind, lower minds, like big talks, theory, philosophy, and praxis. Okay, what do we do? What do we agree upon? So that can put theory into praxis, but this also Mercury is humor. Okay, Mercury is humor, and he is using simple humor. And simple to me that can be Mercury Taurus. So we could be dealing with another another Virgo rising, a Mercury Taurus. It could be like a Mercury Taurus, the simple thing, simple, free of pose, um, and, and putting grand ideas, Jupiter, into praxis, Mercury. Okay, and Mercury in Taurus, but yeah, Mercury, and he also like dealt with finances and dealt with psychoanalysis. So those are the Taurus, Scorpio axis that I expect to be active there. And now this is interesting because we are on the eclipses time. We're not in eclipse season, but it's eclipses time changing from the Taurus Scorpio axis towards the Aries Libra axis. Okay, we're in the axis of psychoanalysis. Okay, we're also in the axis of finances. Um, so it can be something like that. It can be that he has. I don't know the exact aspect between Jupiter and Mercury. It can be something like a rulership. It can be something like, I don't think it's mutual reception because Mercury is like in Taurus. If I take that prediction, but it can be like it can be harmonious. It can be disharmonious. I don't know. Um, but definitely a connection between them allows him to communicate big philosophy, big theory into day to day, in practice, how it works, in what we call tachles, okay, in Hebrew and in German, tachles. So, his parents were atheists. He spent most of his childhood in Portoroz, which was a coastal town, so this little town, exposed to Western film, theory, and popular culture. Okay. When he was a teenager, they moved to Ljubljana, where he attended Bezigrad. Is that Belgrade? Belgrade High School? Bezigrad? Okay. Originally wanting to become a filmmaker. And then he abandoned this to choose philosophy. Okay, so he studied with filmmaking. Filmmaking. His first topic was in academia was filmmaking. Well, it can be Neptune. Um, I don't know how to delineate filmmaking. I'm sorry. I studied filmmaking as well, but and then he studied philosophy, filmmaking, moving pictures, philosophy, moving pictures, philosophy. It can be another facet of the Mercury Jupiter thingy because Mercury is applied science imagery. So for filmmaking, you would need Mercury with the eyes, Mercury with the luminary, or it can be something decanic, like but deacons. It's interesting. I don't know which type of system to use for deacons, so I can't do the like decanic prediction. Um, well, definitely one of like luminaries would have to be involved with Mercury and with Jupiter. So one of the luminaries with Mercury, Jupiter, something like that, can give us lumiere, light, and that would well, filmmaking is both light, okay, it's sun light, but also moonlight because it's reflecting. You shoot something on the screen and it reflects. So it's the connection between, for example, I have sun moon sextile. Okay, so the project and the reflect are in harmony. So that can be, and then technology involved. So that would be Mercury. And I guess, yes, both my moon and my sun are in Mercury Deacon. So, okay, then I studied filmmaking in the beginning. Um, okay, and then philosophy. So philosophy can be many things. Philosophy can be just be like, turned into the ninth house. Having a ninth house perfected year with, I don't know, Saturn in it. I don't know. Like, because philosophy, it doesn't necessarily mean Jupiter. Let's see. Education. In 1967, during an era of liberalization in Titwest, Yugoslavia, so he was dealing in interesting times. Okay, he enrolled in the University of Ljubljana and studied philosophy and sociology. Just today, I was thinking, oh, sociology is something that I miss information on, of this, and now I'm doing a sociologist as well. No, I'm. I don't know how to edit. No. Okay. He enrolled at the University of Ljubljana and studied philosophy and sociology. Began reading French structuralists. Of course, this probably for me when I studied filmmaking, structuralism myth was a part. This is also how I was in the introduction to Lacan, also linguist theories because of sign, signifier, and so on. And then when I eventually studied linguistics, they taught Chomsky, but that's already seeing filmmaking as a language, then looking into language, then the structure of structuralism, and then philosophy is like it's a natural thing to do. So this was probably his interest in filmmaking led him to interest in philosophy, and from there he went to major in philosophy. He published his first translation of a text by Jacques Derrida into Slovenian. Okay, so again, language translation. Okay, to translate something, I would need a Mercury that has something to do with Saturn, because I don't think you can edit a body of work or translate a body of work without having any Saturn. It could be like Saturn transit to his Mercury that can give that. Um, that can happen. Or something natal that predicts that. Or Mercury in Saturn sign, which again I said I'm not so sure about, unless it's Mercury in Aquarius or something. But yeah. Zizek frequented the circles of dissident intellectuals, including Heideggerian, and I have an open affair with Heidegger that I need to delve into. I know this will happen. Philosophers Tyne Haribar and Ivo Urbansis. I love it. I nearly don't know any name, which is fantastic because it rarely happens. So this is lovely when it comes to philosophers and thinkers. Okay, not in every field. Um, Published articles in alternative magazines such as Praxis, Tribuna, and Problemi. As an astrologer, I read it Ptolemy, but it's not. Which he also edited. Again, editing for editing this nitpicking job. I need a Mercury Saturn there. Mercury is not enough for me. Even the strongest, like Virgo Mercury, is not enough for me. I need the Mercury Saturn there for to materialize that. That can give me, that can transition from um, like a Taurus Mercury, which can be Taurus Mercury because Saturn is like triplicity ruler, but then would have to have an aspect there to Saturn. I would probably need Mercury either in Aquarius or aspect in Saturn. In 1971, he accepted the job. For sure, I'm not likely to see Spica on his Mercury because Spica is eloquent. It would be very interesting if I would see Spica appearing in a prominent place in his chart because Spica is about eloquency. And that would add a facet of, you know, another color to Spica. But I don't think I'd see that. So accepted the job as an assistant researcher with the promise of tenure, but was dismissed after his master's thesis was denounced by the authorities as being non-Marxist. Yes, these things do happen. You need to know where to go. He graduated from the University of Ljubljana in 1981 as a Doctor of Arts in philosophy for his dissertation entitled The Theoretical and Practical Relevance of French Structuralism. So I would definitely need to refresh my structuralism knowledge to do this prediction correctly. He spends next few years as in what was described as professional wilderness. Yeah, interesting. So this professional wilderness fulfilling his legal duty of undertaking a year-long national service in the Yugoslavian army in Karlovac. I don't know how to delineate mandatory army service, and this is bizarre because I'm Israeli and we have mandatory army service. So, yeah. Academic career. So he translated Lacan, Freud, and Louis Althusser. I don't remember Althusser stuff. He used Lacan's work to interpret Hegelian and Marxist philosophy. Okay, so we got psychoanalysis. I think Althusser was also linguist, and Hegel, which is of course philosophy. Completed the second doctorate in psychoanalysis, philosophy in psychoanalysis, and in Paris, University of Paris, under Jacques-Alain Miller, entitled La philosophie entre les symptômes et les fantasmes. So phantasma is also fantasy, but symptoms, entering the philosophy of fantasy. Zizek wrote the introduction of Slovene translation from G.K. Chesterton and Jean Le Carre, detective novels. Okay, so he was translating detective novels. Well, I think it's a multifaceted Mercury. It's probably Mercury aspecting many things. It can be a Mercury Pluto. You know, like a Mercury Pluto hard aspect. What would I find in Scorpio? Well, you know, we can treat the like detective stuff. Well, of course, psychoanalysis is Plutonian. Like his year of birth will tell me it's Pluto generation. So, but I didn't look at his year of birth. So let's make it fun. I would expect him to be Pluto in Virgo, because Pluto in Virgo is like this every detail thing, or alternatively, the late Pluto in Leo, the very late Pluto in Leo. Like, what? Could this be like another Pluto Regulus thingy? well, with the many superlatives that he has, maybe, but I don't think he dealt with solar, Regulian figures. That would probably make him more like a Regulian figure himself. And you think about the superlative that he was given, like Elvis and stuff. We could be dealing with another Regulian or either a solar, just Mercury, Leo, Mercury, just Mercury, Leo. I don't know. Like, not impossible. It can play. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, or, yeah, like it can be Regulian Pluto. But like if I look at the Regulian, like the actual Pluto Regulus, when I talked about the freeze, but you know what? When he was deemed the most dangerous philosopher, blah blah blah, then maybe, maybe, maybe. And that Pluto will definitely have like a big aspect with that Mercury. Um, is something he was known for. Mercury Pluto can also give you that type of a more authentic communication. And authentic can be, he communicates, but then the Mercury would have to come from, yeah. I mean, with Taurus, it would give us like the end of Taurus, I don't know, Natal or something. It would give us a square between Pluto and Mercury, and then Mercury being like, the commoner and so on and so forth. Um, so yeah. And Pluto Mercury can also be like detective stuff. The following year, he achieved international recognition as a social theorist with the 1989 publication of his first book in English. So again, internationally acknowledged. International. That can mean either ruler of the ninth in the 11th, because, or ruler of the 11th in the ninth, public figure abroad internationally. The 12th usually give us a more isolated person, more retreated person, person in exile. So I'm not expecting that to be, the 12th kind of publicity, but more ninth house, 11th house. But again, remember with Spirit of Matter, there is always the 9th, 11th, 9th, 10th, 9th, 12th, 11th, all that, with a little bit of the 3rd and some of the 6th. When we talk about thinkers. So, Zizek has been publishing in journals such as Lacanian Inc., in these times. Okay, so where he's published, that's okay, like everywhere. Deal not only with philosophy, but also intervene at the levels of ideology, critique, politics, and art theory. I had a name. Oh, I had a name, but I forgot. There's another person that came into my mind, but I don't have neither his chart nor did I read his book, so I don't know. So again, ideology critique. So this can be from the facet of Uranus or again Aquarius, or another Mercury Saturn facet, because Saturn also rules Aquarius. Politics, Mercury Pluto. Art theory. Art theory. It can be Taurus in the ninth again. That Mercury Taurus. Political career. So 1980s, he was a columnist for the alternative youth magazine Mladina, which was a critical of Tito's policies, Yugoslav policies, especially of militarization of society. Critique of militarization of society. Something hard aspect in Mars. um, member of the Communist Party of Slovenia until 1988, where he quit in protest of the JBTZ trial, together with 32 other Slovenian intellectuals. Okay, so this is where, it's just the times where you have to take a position, and then you take a position, and then you become identified or you go viral for the position that you have taken. So life put him. This tells me this is the work of outer planets. Okay? That's the Me Too of Yugoslavia, probably. When you talk about the army being so integrated into society that when you go against it, then you're like, you're considered dangerous and to be outspoken. Um, but this is the work of outer planets. Outer planets put you in the situation where you are a part of the people who deliver something on a societal level. Now, of course, he studied sociology, so that's again an outer planet thing. What, like, I don't know how to delineate sociology, because society is like, oh, Gemini, Mercury, well, yeah, but it's like it's not enough. um, Sociology. It can be like a luminary in Gemini, but then where would Gemini be? But definitely something hard aspect in Mars. Maybe ruler of the ninth, hard aspect in Mars. Or like, if Mars is the ruler of the ninth, which I don't predict, then that, although, with psychoanalysis, it can be both Taurus and, yeah. Um, Mars, not like Mars in contradiction to something, but harshly aspected, but not weak. It's a strong Mars. Okay, to critique the army, it can be a retrograde Mars, but it can be like a retrograde Scorpio Mars, like I have. Something like that, something in that, magnanimous Mars, but not. I think it's a strong retrograde Mars. It can be like a strong retrograde Mars because it's being reflective, being criticized. It's criticizing things, and his job is being reflective. But to criticize the army is a very militant action. Like, if you've been in any country where army service is mandatory, then you know that saying any word about the army is like, oh my God! Like, you just say, well, we need to change this to that, and people go at you like, you're a traitor, you're a this, you're a that. You're like, no, I'm just trying to make the army better. But okay. um so yes, that's for the Mars. So defense of human rights, civil society, became politically involved. Again, these are the times. Okay, you like, if you stay in Slovenia, you gotta be doing something, and if you're a leading voice, then you gotta be saying something. And it was probably eager to talk. So fought for the democratization of Slovenia. So democratization is definitely Aquarius, and we're approaching Pluto in Aquarius. So this is a good time to talk about the transition, the decentralization of regimes. And he was criticizing not, okay, basically shifting from army ruled, or the danger of being army ruled, relevant to many countries. I am in one. To democratization of the regime. So definitely, democratization is definitely something. Because, say Aquarius, it can be Saturn. Okay, it can be a good meeting of Saturn and Uranus, disintegrating stuff. So it could be like a conjunction between them, or it could be um, But it's also interesting, like the unification. Did he do the unification of theories? I don't know if he did. In the first free elections in 1990s, he ran as the Liberal Democratic Party's candidate for the former four-person collective of presidency of Slovenia. Okay, this is another transition when a person has done something, and here I'm asked to reconsider the Regulian Pluto. Remember my previous episode about Peter de Vries? And I talked about he had great achievements, he was internationally acknowledged, and then he was testing the ground, he founded a party, and he was testing the ground to see does he have the people. Okay, he had some of the people, he didn't have all of the people. He was trying to go for justice and emphasizing the need to execute justice. So, very Martian goal. And very Martian figure. And here we have another person that is going political, is running to be, you know, democratization, but he's a leader of a party. So he calls to decentralize, but also calls to lead. One of the four people, okay, to lead the country. So we have this interesting, it can simply be something like a sun in Aquarius. But I think about the Aquarius Leo pole and that notion of the desire to decentralize in alignment even with the desire to lead. So to be a leader, but in a democratic state. Okay, to meet both these needs. Um, so it can definitely be a Sun Saturn thingy. Even Sun Saturn harmonious or even opposition, it can also give you that. Okay, the desire to lead, but in a decentralized, in a controlled fashion, in a self-controlled fashion. So in that, okay, we think, we also need to acknowledge that politically. The era of the political celebrity, of personal politics, of populist leader, populist as in leaders that represent the people, okay, and the shades, okay, the bright lights and the contrast, okay, of that leadership. The desire to be a leader, it's a process for democratization that happened in tandem with personal politics. And when you think about it, it's not in contradiction. The notion of a person who is a representation of the people being leading in a leadership position that is rather decentralized relative to an army junta or dictatorship or authoritarian form of regime. And then you can, I'm going to the Aquarius Leo axis here. Okay, the Aquarius, the democratic leader. And there are also the facets of a celebrity leader, a celebrity thinker, a celebrity philosopher, a celebrity political figure. So again, this is another, it can simply be Pluto in Leo. But it can also be even Regulian Pluto in Leo, and with the Sun and Saturn doing something. So this is, okay, public life. In 2019, he began hosting a mini-series called How to Watch the News with Slavoy Zizek. So what happened to his political career? Okay. uh, reality of the virtual. Okay, talking about reflecting about the medium and the message. So would that be like a Mercury retro stuff? I don't know. Reflecting about the media, thinking about the media. But well, it can also be a facet of the Jupiter Mercury connections. Mm. Okay, so this is so he also did filmmaking, documentaries. Um, 2006, The Pervert's Guide to Cinema. Okay, interesting. The Pervert's Guide to Ideology. It's a very sexy name. Okay. Um, Ideas and okay, examined life. Speaking about his conception of ecology at a garbage dump. Ah, this was important that I saw. Okay, this can be a Pluto Mercury, by the way. Pluto Mercury had that, like examining shit. Even for example, if I have Pluto opposition Mercury, what did I speak about in my just the last video that I didn't. Oh, it will be uploaded in the 25th or something. Then I talked about space, and I was like thinking about the toilets and gravity waves and the gravity on space, and then you have to vacuum the poo poo from the person so that it will descend. Like this is Pluto Mercury. you know, thinking about those things. So this is a very Pluto Mercury, and Pluto Mercury also delves into psychoanalysis, and Pluto Mercury also delves into taboo. Yeah. So, but then where would that Mercury be? Ecology, environmentalism. I don't know to who places Mercury, but I think Mercury has a lot of aspects there. Uh, Given the voice of an era of absurdity. Given a voice to an era of absurdity. Okay. Um, so, in April, Zizek debated psychology professor Jordan Peterson, April 2019, at the Sony Center, Toronto, Canada, over happiness under capitalism versus Marxism. So that would be one for the records, well, to tell you the truth, I did the Jordan Peterson episode, and just to make sure I'm live, yes, I am. I did the Jordan Peterson episode, and then I kind of stashed it. It's one of the things where you're not sure if it's about giving a voice to a person who has an interesting and unique voice, but also happen to preach for victim blaming when it talks like I don't think we are post that type of power abuse enough to give that voice in sort of like this is what people thought back then. And while he was a very bright thinker, he was also, just like if you think about Voltaire, then for later Voltaire addressed his anti-Semitism and said, well, I understand that I was prejudiced about the Jews, and they are they are not worse than, Christians, or they are not worse than Christians or Muslims. So that was the late Voltaire. And so Jordan Peterson is not in that late Voltaire stage enough for me to talk about what he previously thought, and then address him. And in this, political climate, then I also have a bit of a sense of responsibility of how much do I enjoy my gusto fantasies of just delving into, doing what I do here, and how much do I restrain myself in a way that I am in alignment with what serves society and not spreads ideas that, oh, it was very fun to see what this thinker thinks like, and then it was like, oh yeah, but those ideas are unfortunately prevalent, which is fucked up. But that's why I chose to not put to public my Jordan Peterson episode. But this is an argument that probably is very interesting to watch. Personal life, well, while it's interesting, um, okay, like while it's interesting, I'm trying to understand if it's something relevant to his thinking. It's not a tabloid episode. Thoughts and positions. That's the most interesting. Thank you. It's not the most interesting. It's just like we reached the cherry on top of the. So Hegelio, like, okay, what was his ideas? I don't care about Hegelio Lacanic now. His early career, a theoretical space moduled by three centers of gravity. Okay. Hegelian dialectics, okay, so dialectic approach, Lacanian psychoanalytic theory, and contemporary criticism of ideology. I don't know how did he criticize ideology, but immediately what comes to mind for me is the L'Homme Rebelle by Albert Camus, and criticizing revolutions, okay, and the thought that the youngsters, the revolt, but without a sense of they have a sense of ideology, but without life experience. And then those people who have life experience don't have the gusto and the vitality to revolt. When they do have the wisdom and the knowledge, they know what needs to change, to be changed. They know how to change, but they don't have the vitality to go get there and change that. So that was the criticism of Albert Camus. I wonder what his criticism is. Designating the theory of Jacques Lacan as fundamental element. Okay. 2010, Zizek instead claimed that for him, Hegel is more fundamental than Lacan. Even Lacan is just a tool for me to read Hegel. I remember the signatures. Oh, never mind. For me, it is Hegel, Hegel, Hegel. Okay, fine. Philosophy happened for me, in some sense, all of philosophy happened in the 50 years between Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, 1781. This is an interesting. I think Pluto was still in. Was either Pluto? Yeah, I think Pluto was either in Aquarius back then or already in Pisces. And the death of George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, 1831. Okay, right before the Industrial Revolution. Alongside his academic. I need to think about this. Even, reflecting on the self and what affected my critical thinking. Like, am I close to these 50 years? Think about it. What do you think about the philosophers that you've been affected by? Was it in the scope of that 50 years? Because indeed, a lot of what we reiterate happened during these times. Alongside his academic theoretical work, Zizek is a prolific commentator. But also, what I notice here that this leads to back in time. Okay, he's traditional in his philosophy. It's an interesting tradition, but it's traditional. Still, it can be Taurus, because Taurus is fixed Earth, but then Mercury, Saturn, history. Like, even if I think, I think about myself, I was like, no, I also think about pragmatism, which is completely 20th century. Okay, not just Pierce, but onwards. I also think about, American philosophy, which was, also 1900s. So my answer to this is no, and this further accentuates to me that he was very Saturn affected in his Mercury and or his Jupiter. Okay, so that could be Jupiter in a Saturn ruled sign, Jupiter in Aquarius. Okay, and that would give me a person who leans on certain type, like he leans on a segment in history that affects his thinking, but is not moving forward. And that's something to notice, okay? I'm not saying that's necessarily a critique, because not moving forward is not necessarily a critique. That can be something about reiterating the things that were right from the past that's actually useful. Like, we all, if you go to study physics, you will learn about, mechanical physics. It's still relevant today. If you want to build a building, you're doing mechanical physics. You're not doing quantum. You're not doing string theory. You're not doing modern physics in many of the cases. Okay, if you just want to build a cabin, you're fine with mechanical physics, and that does need to be taught, and that does need to be reiterated. Alongside his academic theoretical work, he's a prolific commentator on the current affairs and contemporary political debates. Subjectivity. Okay. A subject may take on... Oh, now this is the finest. Okay, now when I finally get to know what did he think? What were his ideas? A subject may take on a symbolic social position. It can never be reduced to this attempted symbolization, since the very taking on of these positions implies a separate I beyond the symbolic. Okay, lovely. I really love those are the things that I'm like. I really like that, because it's understanding that if I identify, and for me this is classic Leo Aquarius, Sun Saturn, Sun Saturn, Sun Saturn, or Leo Aquarius, Leo Aquarius. And this is the understanding that the I is a member of society. Society is comprised out of individuals. If I take on a social position, that implies that I'm an individual. Because I'm not society. I can't be society. I can talk about society, but without the I've talked about nothing. Society doesn't exist if I'm not a part of society. I don't exist outside of the context of society, even if I am a critiquer or a reactioner or a rebel or a person who is isolated from society. It's a part of the I. Okay, unless I grew up in some isolated island on whatnot. So I can't trace when this idea goes back to, but earlier today, this morning, I was speaking about Rene Descartes and the I think therefore I am, and his Aries stuff. Now we have Jupiter in Aries, but I don't think he has Jupiter in Aries. I could be fatalistically wrong. I could be. Because, hey, why would I speak about him now? Maybe he has Jupiter in Aries. Who knows? Beyond the symbolic, that does take on. Okay. Under scrutiny, nothing positive can be said about this subject. This I eludes symbolization. Signifier signal. It cannot be discerned as anything but that which cannot be symbolized. Thus, without the initial attempted failed symbolization, subjectivity cannot present itself. So this is a dialectic process of getting to know the I. So if I talk about society, I attempt to presume something that isn't. Let me see, let me do it again. But then I am not a symbol of society. And also society is not a symbol, like cannot symbolize me. So this is a union between a signifier sign signifier sign, I think in signal, signifier sign, the triad. And for example, if I say Shirley is a name, it's a signifier, okay? And then Shirley, me, is me, the person, is not Shirley. It's just a signifier to denote me. And then we have this symbiotic but relations, but we can also have a dialectic relation where I am and I am not Shirley, because Shirley is a word. But the word denotes me because there is an agreement, Mercury agreement, on the relation between the signifier and the sign to create a symbol. Okay? So you see the writing as TJ and you say, oh, this is Shirley. How did you get to that? Those are these relations. But these relations are also dialectic in the sense that I am not the right, I'm not the word Shirley. But I am Shirley. Eh? So, but let's see, where does he take that? The subject of the signifier is a retroactive effect of the failure of its own representation. Exactly. This is just what I said. Like, I mean, this is what I described. Okay, it's like if I attempt to say, who am I? I'm Shirley. Am I Shirley? Really? I write with the word Shirley. Is it me? No, it's words written on paper. So that's a failed attempt to signify myself. Now there's confusion. What do we do now? But wait, the person who failed to signify himself, that's me. Okay? That's that. It's weird, I know. That is why the failure of representation is the only way to represent it adequately. And this is, well, this is absurd, but this is also an absurd reality. It's also very realistic. It's interesting because the political context in which this type of thoughts were, well, this leads me back to René Descartes. It leads me back to Descartes. Okay, I think, therefore I am. And then Heidegger said, well, to be the subject of that thinking, you first have to be. And then Zizek would say, well, when you say I think, therefore I am, this is a failed representation. You fail to represent yourself when you say that. This is not you, it's not your representation. But the fact that you fail to represent yourself, it means that there is a you that failed to represent yourself. And René Descartes will say, well, you just said what I said, but without, but I failed, therefore I am. Okay, okay. But that's what it is. If the way I get it. Zizek attributes this position on the subject to Hegel, his description of the man as the knight of the world. Okay, I don't remember that. I read the introduction to the phenomenology of I don't remember what, the entire thing, and like many people who did that and had the same experience, I was expecting the introduction to end and the thing to begin, but the name did not fail to represent the book, and it was an introduction, a book-long introduction. That was the book. Phenomenology of the it's not spirit, it's like phenomenology of what? I don't remember. Into Lacan with his description of the bard split subject who split subject. Split subject. Well, you would be surprised because I actually think about that could be a ascendant. You would probably expect like ascendant Gemini because like or Pisces, like something dual, but split. I think. You know why I say that? I think it's an actually Virgo, because if I think again, I go back to Finance chart in his Virgo ascendant, he was looking at light and basically the dual aspect of like the quantum aspect of light, the wave particle thingy, and he was explaining that, and that is, like, his Mercury was in Taurus, so with making something, he was putting it in simple words while not forgetting to mention that if you understand quantum physics, you're probably doing it wrong. Um, so with quantum, there is a split effect. Okay, think about the two slots experiment. And because of that, I think the splitting of something, and Mercury is about dissecting something, but I think it's dissecting something, dissecting an idea in this case, and dissecting the self, or the self as a split, is reflecting upon the self. So I could expect like ascendant Virgo there. It can be Gemini, but because of the dissection, if you think about Pisces, it's bringing two splits into union. So you can like something along these lines, okay? But even ascendant Virgo would put us on the Virgo Pisces axis, okay? And this is a very dialectic relationship because Pisces brings two opposites into one. It unionizes the conflicting elements of something. And Virgo dissects things. And so the dialectic process is to dissect something and bringing it to one. Okay? Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. That was Hegel. Um, I'm not sure if that's only like Virgo Pisces, but definitely this is not the dissecting of Mars. It's the bringing apart of things into compartmentalized stuff of Virgo, but the dialectic itself, the dialectic process itself, for the anti something, we would need Mars, I think. We would, because Mercury is adaptable. On the other hand, Mercury also plays like devil's advocate. So it's the thing and its opposite. And this is for Lacan. He also had Virgo placements. I think he also had Virgo ascendant. And he talked about that the Lacanian subject is that which isn't the self. I can never be you. You can never delve into experience. Like we dissect the existence. And Lacan also had the Saturnian Mercury. It was like it's grim. I think he had Saturn Virgo. I don't remember, but it's like he mentioned the grim experience of the dissecting of being basically, and as an existential crisis, a chronicle existential crisis that cannot be resolved. um, Zizek's first book in English, the subject, oh, this I said. So Hegel, the Night of the World. Okay, split subject that we said. Cartesian. Voila, voila. Exactly, of the cognito. Genau gesagt, exactly those things. So we are, so there's, well, I don't know. It has to be something in Aries for that. Like, it's not just the Mars. I don't know. Does it have a Jupiter in Aries? Yes, something in Aries. Ah, yeah. According to, and he was affected by thinkers, I think, that had Pluto in Aries. Some of them, if I get it right. No, Pluto in Aquarius. Neptune in Aries. No, scrap that. According to Zizek, these thinkers insisting on the role of the subject ran counter to culturalist or historicist position held by thinkers such as Louis Althusser and Michel Foucault, okay, the relativism, which posit that subjects are bound by and reducible to their historical, cultural, or symbolic context. So this is the question of, if I look at psychology and the question of nature and nurture. So sociology is like the big nurture part, and nature is a very scorpionic, like the nature. and nature is when I say nature is scorpionic, I infer it because of the tale of the nature of Scorpio. When we talk of helping someone, asking someone to help him to go through the river, and then midway into the river, after promising that they won't sting, they won't sting, they won't sting, they sting, and then they both die. And the person said, "Well, why did you do that? It kills you and it kills me. We will lose in this situation." And the Scorpio said, "But this is my nature." Okay, and therefore, I guess nature was associated with the powers, the subterranean powers of nature in that sense. So so when you ask, is a person is this person this annoying because that's his nature, or this is the culture he grew up in? Sociology will tell you this is the culture he grew up in. Psychology will say, well, we don't know. It depends on which stream of psychology would say. And the scorpionic tell, well, that's their nature. This is who they are. Okay. So culturalists would say that this is the culture that this person grew up in, and the effect of the culture, emphasize the effect of the culture, and this is also something that leads us to relativism by Michel Foucault, and the awareness of the way differences play at shaping the personality, the psychology of a human being, of the individual, okay, of the I. So ideology, with this Lacanian notion, is a major contribution to political theory. Oh, he's major, okay. The sublime object of ideology in the documentary The Pervert's Guide to Ideology, in which he stars. As the well-known places in which it is discussed, Zizek believes that ideology has been frequently misinterpreted as dualistic, misrepresented dualism posits that there is a real world of material relations and objects outside of oneself which is accessible to reason. Now, yeah, let me read that again. This misrepresented. Okay, so, I don't think he was solipsistic, though he may have been. Solipsistic means that, everything, there is an I, and this whole world is conceived by the I. Like, you are the only thing, like, if you're watching this video, I'm a reflection of I'm not even a reflection. All of what you're seeing, this voice that it's like, it's all you're conceiving this reality. While the dualistic position would say, well, there is me and there is you. Okay, and then you could project stuff on me. Okay, this is where the psychology of projection. You could project your stuff on me, or I can project my stuff on you. Okay, with the part where I do a synastry with the person, and I say, well, this is what the way his chart meets my chart. It's like, what do we project on each other? Okay, it's non-dualist, but it's also dualist in a way. The dualist aspect of it is like, there is this chart and there is that chart, and how do these two interact? Solipsism says, no, there isn't this chart and that chart. Okay, it's all the I. So he was not dualist, but I don't know if he was, well, this is a difficult one, because there is non-dualism, which is that interesting stuff that we means the majority of experiences of humanity. But then there is also, solipsism. They're not, these are not just, theories of consciousness, because theories of consciousness, there are many theories of consciousness, and this is the scope of this episode to explain all of them. But ideology is made up of fiction, that structure political life. In Lacan's terms, ideology belongs to the symbolic order. Zizek argues that these fictions are primarily maintained at an unconscious level rather than a conscious one, since according to psychoanalytic theory, the unconscious can determine one's action directly, bypassing one's conscious awareness, as in paraplexis. What is paraplexis? Ah, the Freudian sleep. Ah, also. Okay, an error in speech, memory, physical action that is due to interference of the unconscious in the internal. Like when, for example, when you know that my accents change and it's not volitional, and my mannerisms change and so on and so forth. So that could be like, for example, I can think about something, or an energy, a consciousness enters, and my mannerism changes with that which I think about. This is something that happens to me. And so it's further accentuated, and then that can be like a lapsus, okay, paraplex, like the unconscious. I unconsciously think about something, or something comes into my mind, and then there is a slip in my mannerism, in my accent, also in the language that I speak sometimes. Ideology can be expressed in one's behavior regardless of one's conscious beliefs. Yeah, so the conscious, the unconscious, and then yet it can be another Pluto Mercury, but also Pluto Mars, because Mars is action and Pluto is the unconscious, but it can also be an effect of something with the ruler of the 12th affecting Mars, or Mars being the ruler of the 12th, or Mars in the 12th even. I don't know, because this is action. Okay, there's thoughts, mannerism, but there's also action, the way we act. But speech is Mercury. It breaks with orthodox Marxist accounts that the ideology, what view they view ideology purely as a system of mistaken beliefs, false consciousness. Drawing on Peter Sloterdijk. Why do I know this name? Critique of Cynical Reason? Sloterdijk. I know why. No. Okay. Zizek argues that adopting a cynical perspective is not enough to escape ideology. Notice the need to escape ideology. We're talking about post-Second World War. And we know that the Second World War was a battle of ideologies. We had fascist ideology, we had Nazi ideology, we had Marxist, we had a communist ideology, socialist ideology, capitalism was beginning to emerge, like on a political. Well, this is beginning to emerge in Europe. Okay, that's like capitalism is a bit older, but also communism. But the Second World War was a battle of ideologies in which, in many ways, capitalism won. And when I say won, I mean a relative win. Okay, it's like the majority of many ideas. It did not erase other ideas. It was just becoming prevalent. The relative majority. Okay, so relative majority is not necessarily even 50%. It can be 20%. Okay, but this is the largest group of the groups of thoughts that we have. And so the need to escape ideology stemmed from the historical contextual experience of the battle of ideologies, of what an ideology can do in terms of harm to society. How much slaughter was in the name of ideology. If we talk about, I think in the 1700s we talk about the battles of religion, and here we have battles of ideology. That was something special to the Second World War. it's no longer a battle of religion, it's a battle of ideology. Both the Nazi regime and the communist regime were not God-based regimes. They were not attempting to display the divine, but there was an ideology that replaced that divine, both in communism and in Nazism. Fascism is an interesting animal because it's a fusion. It takes from capitalism, it takes from socialism, it takes from Nazism, and it makes this conglomerate of absurd. Um, so, it also had its own aesthetics, which is very interesting. So, this is why we would need to do, this is where cynicism would become a virtue. And as you think about Voltaire, right? In his times, but I know I have to do Voltaire as well. I know, and this is also where you want to make sure that you proof check that you're not an ideologist. Okay, think about it. When I was 12 years old, I came to my mama and say, well, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had like no personal properties and everybody could have anything? My mama looked at me and was like, that's communism. And I looked at her, why is that a bad thing? And then she taught me about Russia. And I was like, oh my God, what do they do with that? So I was very much informed at a very young age. But this is exactly the age where you think, this is not the age of big thinkers. Who are the big thinkers? Those who dissect reality and put it into fractions and kind of criticize the ideal, which is very interesting for the outer planets, like the critique of the ideal. And you know what? Saturn, Neptune, the critique of the ideal. Saturn, Neptune. So yeah. Slavoy Zizek argues that adopting, okay, not enough. Okay, postmodernists subconsciously are consciously cynical about political situation. They continue to reinforce it through their behavior, which intuitively I think is true. But yeah, freedom. So, and again, I talked about Saturn in relation to his Mercury, and about his midheaven having to do something with Neptune. It could be like he could have Saturn in Pisces or something, or Saturn Neptune conjunction. I don't think so. Let's see. Zizek claims that a sense of political freedom is sustained by a deeper unfreedom, at least under liberal capitalism. You know what? When I read this, the immediate analogy that comes to my mind is, if you're gonna have to watch the video I did earlier today, because I talk about many things, and one of the things I talked about was the necessity of determinism to exert free will. So if I want to move this hand up and down, okay, I have the free will to move this hand up and down. Let's say that I have the free will to move this hand up and down. To execute this movement, there has to be a deterministic system that allows for the nervous system to order my hand, and my hand to go following the orders. It can't do what it wants, and so on and so forth. So, that requires a deterministic system to exert free will. We also need randomness for free will to either emerge or to previously exist, or both, right? So when I think about that, he talks about the political freedom is sustained by unfreedom under liberal capitalism. Now, on a large scale, you know the story of defense, okay? If you tell, or limitation that sparks your creativity. For example, if you tell to a group of dancers, I don't remember who said that, you tell to a group of dancers, just dance, freestyle. They can be like frozen, they don't know where to begin, what to do. But if you give them a chair and you say, dance, the only rule that you have is that you must use this chair in all of your movements. You can't steer away from this chair. You can do whichever style you want, whatever you want. You have this limitation that this chair is a part of your show. Now they have something to work with. Now they're being creative. Now they know what to talk about. Okay? And so we'll always need, I talked about chaotic systems earlier today. Chaotic systems. Chaotic systems are sustained by randomness and determinism. And I talked about chaotic system as a symbolic representation or a theoretical representation of the essences of Saturn and Uranus. Because Uranus is what we would call the randomness, the unpredictability. It moves here, it moves there, but if you look deeper in, there is a sense of order. There are attractors. There is a threshold. There are certain deterministic factors within this chaotic system. And you say, but it can't be predicted. Well, it can be closely predicted. And those, the Saturn Uranus dance, those interactions are what governs, what ignites, what sparks our nervous systems, our hormones, okay, our erotic attraction. Because Uranus, I was like, Pluto erotic attraction. I was like, what Pluto erotic, blah, blah. But yes, of course, Uranus, the life force, the Kundalini awakening. So, of course, it is chaotic, but it's also, what is Kundalini awakening? The sex energy goes, the chi, whatever you want to call it, it goes from the root chakra up into the crown. Okay, they even have special crystals that take it back down, like bismuth. It takes it back down. Does the opposite of Kundalini rise. It brings it back to the body. You explode and you astrally project. So, so to sustain freedom, we always need certain boundaries. But he was paying attention to those boundaries that exist in liberal capitalisms. Like the freedom that you have is sustained by certain boundaries. And then what are the boundaries? Okay, what do we set in stone? And how is that affecting us? How is the fact that these are the boundaries affecting the type of freedom that we have, or how it is sustained? Because there are boundaries like, well, you must use a chair in your dance, and the dance becomes beautiful and creative. But if you must use a slave in your dance, then we're, and it's not an SSC setting, then we're sacrificing something that perhaps we cannot allow ourselves to sacrifice in terms of human virtue. In 2002, Zizek endorses Lenin's distinction between the formal and the actual freedom, claiming that liberal society only contains formal freedom, freedom of choice within the coordinates of the existing power relations. Okay, so you can choose. Think about the bipartisan structure. Okay, I had in my lesser known Twitter account, I had a post about, I think it was Dan Waits. Every time I think about Dan Waits, I think Tom Waits, and then I have to translate it. It's like Tom Jacobs. No, Tom Jacobs is another astrologer. Tom Waits is a well-known singer. Dan Waits is a great astrologer. And he was basically retweeting something, and his commentary was, I don't remember what his commentary was. Let me read that again. Oh, he was talking about the control, like the technologies that were developed during the COVID years will be played when Pluto arrives in Aquarius, which is absolutely something we need to address. And that's a great commentary. And I was thinking, like, when I was retweeting the retweet, then my point was like, think about the bipartisan structure of regime, okay, Pluto Capricorn, and how you would have a funny situation where during COVID, if you wanted to protect your womb from the effects of the vaccine, then you would have to vote for Trump. Okay, but if you're a trans, if you're a trans man wanting to protect your womb from the effects of vaccine, then you have to I'm sorry, a trans men wanting to protect your womb from the effects of vaccine, you would have to vote for Trump. But if you are, wanting to protect yourself, your ability to abort the child, if you, God forbid, are raped or something, then you would have to go blue. So, like, I'm not going to further accentuate the levels of absurdity, but you would have like weird voting patterns due to the bipartisan structure of the regime. Well, what the world presents you with two options, and you have to make a third option. That's a good criticism. Uh, to understand that we are being framed when we are given a choice. And prohibiting actual freedom in the sight of an intervention that undermines these very coordinates. Okay? In an oft quoted passage from a book published in the same year, he writes that these conditions of liberal censorship, we feel free because we lack the very language to articulate our unfreedom. And this is a connection between language and having the words to say something, to being able to feel. It's actually something that I'm critical about because we do have pre-linguistic emotions. And yes, we do have difficulty to access these emotions as we develop language. So he was probably addressing that. Um, I'm critical of this notion. I'm critical of this relation between language and, but this is something that it's worth delineating, because that means that the ability to express something verbally equals the ability to feel something. Okay, what we word is what we feel. So that can be, for that, like, it can either be Mercury in Cancer, which I don't think is the case, although it can be the case with the sociology thingy. And it can also be a Mercury moon kind of thing. A Mercury moon, oh, like, probably harmonious aspect, actually. But you know what? I don't know. It's a Mercury moon something, because moon is like how we feel, and Mercury is what we express. And then the availability, it can also be a moon in Virgo. It's like I can't feel something that I can express, I feel in words. So it can be something moon in Virgo, maybe even moon in Gemini, something like that. So, 2019 writes that Marx made a valuable point in economy combines in a unique way political and personal freedom with social unfreedom. Personal freedom, so free selling myself on the market, is the very form of my true. Think about sex work, right? Oh, you can sell and buy anything, including your body, and the very fact that you can sell your body uh, puts you in an unfree situation because your sense of self is now on the market. But that does not have to only pertain to your body. Think about ideas. I could do this podcast and think about, what are the most searched, and this is another thing I spoke about earlier today when I talk about my academic background. I had two professors, one more Saturn-like, one more Jupiter-like. two professors, and one said, well, you need to look at what are the Q1's peer-reviewed journals, and what can you contribute to these peer-reviewed journals. You must go to the United States if you wanted a career in research, and so on and so forth. And my Jupiterian professor said, no, you write about what you like. We will find where to publish it. Um, so as you can see, my channel continues the legacy of the Jupiterian notion. But another way I could do this is to be, SEO savvy. It's not that I don't know how to do this in general. It's that I'm doing that, not compromising certain freedoms that I have, and paying the price in views. So there's certain exposure that this channel does not have, but also there are certain things that I can speak about that if I try to speak on, let's say, in the astrology podcast, I would be like, don't shadow ban us. We can't talk about that, or something like that. And then we have the price of exposure and sharing lovely discourse with lovely intellectuals. But what you sacrifice is certain amount of personal freedom to do what you want, in which structure you want, however you want. And so the freedom to sell yourself on is not just to sell your body, it's also to sell your ideas and your psychology and your sense of self, okay, and your uniqueness. It's like, how do I fit into the uniqueness? What is asked from me when I'm a public figure? Then I need to be like this, I need to be like that. I can't do, all these jokes or all that jokes. People look up to me, versus that sense of primordial freedom before you get viral markets and are being, in the risk of being cancelled or this or that, or just not making money. Um, so um, so this is also a critique of Marxism, the way I see it. Marx's point on economy. So you're supposed to have political freedom, you have personal freedom, but social unfreedom. So your personal freedom is you are free to sell yourself on the market. And actually your freedom becomes your unfreedom. Okay, you're free to do something, but then you're unfree. Okay? But this is something that is relevant to freedom in general. It's an inherent quality of freedom. I talked about Uranus, Saturn. It's an inherent quality of freedom. Okay, I'm free to say here many things that I would not be free to say here in this format, in this way, if I would be working with a team of producers, with an agent, with an editor, with a filmmaker. Right now I can open my camera, poof, right now, Slavoy, Zizek, Slavoy, Zizek. I was like, my mom says something to me, like, Mama, don't. Now I do that. If you have to join, a staff around you, you have to accommodate for the schedule. You don't have the spark that I have right now that I would like to preserve in the future. So, but that freedom means that I might not elect my timing the best. I might not have the best SEO. I might not be doing that with a partner, like a colleague or something. And there are many misses. There are many sacrifices that I have. And so that personal freedom can also enslave me to the extent that I don't do certain cooperations that I could do if I didn't have like Saturn on my Sun in the third house right now, Uranus on my Sun in the third house right now, square in Saturn. So that is something that I see as inherent. Inherent to freedom is limitation. To execute freedom, you need to accept some sort of limitation. And then with capitalism, like, you can sell yourself on the market, but then when you sell yourself on the market, then that has limitation, that you are abiding by the market rules. That you have to apply to large audiences. You have to speak about everybody. Who cares about Slavoy Zizek right now with the come on, the world is going crazy. It's Christmas Eve. You're not being relevant to anything. Doing an episode about Slavoy Zizek. Okay? That's freedom many people can envy. But I can envy, having, I don't know, a million viewers with steady income and cash flow and other things that I could do if I would accept certain limitations. But probably when Saturn hits Pisces, I'm going to be accepting types of limitations that I don't accept now. Poof. And this is my critique over Zizek's point. So I hope you got Zizek's point. Okay, he was agreeing with Marx on the level that I sort of agree and disagree. But just like there is always going to be a limitation, and your freedom and unfreedom are always entangled. You just need to find the mixture that is correct for the times that is correct for you. When we are formally free, only then we become aware of how limited this freedom actually is. Okay, you get formally free. And again, it's something again that I spoke about today. I had a friend, now famous, Maya Filst, and she sued Haifa University for their quasi-human trafficking operational system. And with students, and if you said no, then you became a Me Too victim. And she was on an interview. Formally, she was able to speak after for nearly a decade fighting for just being able to say her name and then being able to speak with her face in her name. But then she was very careful because there were the things that she could speak about and the things that she couldn't speak about. So formally, she was free, but this also got her to realize how unfree she was to speak about many other things that, just are not a part of the verdict. So ties you in. It's like I'm free. Like I have a business. I'm free to open a business, and I have to define it in the taxes. If I, for example, I'm a holistic health practitioner, but I choose to deliver my knowledge in ways that don't, like not to meet people one-on-one, because if I meet people one-on-one, I have to run a booking, and I have to run it in a particular way, and it has to be written by a pen or something like that. And it's like, this is too Saturnian for me. I love treating people. I love meeting people. My entire spirit of matter was to put the spark, to put myself in the spotlight in a place where that's the right place to do so that I can be available for my patients. So they'll be the star of the show when I meet them. But then I realized it's too Saturnian for me to do that now. And that's a limitation that I was not willing to accept. So I'm a holistic health practitioner, but I'm not taking in patients in the usual way because I deliver knowledge in other ways. So they don't tie me in a way that I can't take on right now. But I do have to define my business. Okay, I do have to define my business in terms of taxes and so on and so forth. Also for Patreon, I opened a Patreon and I said, well, I opened a Patreon. I do have a Patreon, so you can feed me. And I said, well, the Patreon is like whenever people are going to donate money, then I have money donated to me, and then I'm going to have enough money. And when I have enough money, I'll have an accountant and everything that I need, so I can cross the threshold of being accountable and accounted in the international sphere. So. And this is the formal freedom. Okay, formal freedom. I am free to sell products, but there is a limitation to this freedom. Okay, I cannot sell you an essential oil blend if you're living in, I don't know, Great Britain or Sweden. I probably cannot sell you, or I would need certain terms and regulations to do that. And so realize that I'm free to do this, but this is the only thing you're free to do in this way. That's what Zizek criticizes. You have formal freedom, but you understand how unfree you are to actually, dance around. It rains. Theology. Zizek. Yeah, we're good. 2 hours to go. I will try to bookmark when I begin the chart analysis, the prediction and chart analysis part. So Zizek has asserted that atheism is a legacy worth fighting for. In the New York Times. He finds extensive conceptual value in Christianity, Protestant Christianity, The subtitle of his 2000 book was The Fragile Absolute, or Why is the Christian Legacy Worth Fighting For? So he labels his position as Christian atheism. I just adore this thing. And I knew the minute I did Zizek, I was like, next up is Habermas, and absolutely next up is Habermas. I don't know if I did Habermas, like for sure he has a Mercury thing. I need to look back because I think I might have done a Habermas. Um, but I know I was looking at Habermas and Mercury, and I think I actually delineated his Mercury from a chart, but I don't remember his chart. So what Habermas did, he acknowledged the value, I don't think he was atheist, he was acknowledging the value of discourse. And I have to overcome the rain. I'm competing with the rain. So I hate the rain. And I was just thinking about the people who can't, like, who don't have a place to be right now in the rain. So I hope for everyone to find a place to be in the rain and the harsh weather. I know US is approaching a like tremendous cold, so I, pray for people there. Right, when talking about religion, funny. And what Habermas did, he was acknowledging the merit of Christianity and the mercy of Christianity and the good judgment of Judaism, and understanding how both are essential and how we need to learn and hear all the voices in society and have decisions that are consensual as consensus. So this is taking what's good from something. It's like that's good in atheism. Great, let's take that. That's good in Christianity. Good, let's adopt that. And I'm possibilionist, so of course I'm drawn to that and I like it. But now think about the ninth house, atheism. Oh, atheism. I don't really have a delineation for that, but this is a very pragmatist view. I know that I'm inferring, but underneath it's pragmatist. It's like the value of a belief. Okay, the pragmatism is about the value of a belief. The truth value of a belief, if a declaration is true or not, is comprised of the implications of believing that. And of course, the entire holistic medical profession is based as well on pragmatism. Okay, it takes me back to years ago when I just started my channel, because the implications of how I see the world, the implications of my beliefs, the way I see those implications, and the way I choose my beliefs can have effect on my well-being and on my body and on my nervous system, and therefore, I think about metabolism and so on and so forth. So I like seeing this. To delineate that, I don't know. And now this is getting long, and he has a lot of ideas, electoral politics, which are worth looking at, but I want to get to the chart. Let's drink my cacao. It's probably cold by now. Ooh. Oh, that's an interesting excerpt. He was horrified by Trump. He was thinking Hillary is the true danger. If Trump wins, both big parties, Republicans and Democrats, would have to return to basics, rethink themselves, and maybe some things can happen there. It's my very desperate hope that if Trump wins, listen, America is not a dictatorial state. He will not introduce fascism, but it will be a kind of big awakening, which is a big awakening. New political processes would be set in motion and be triggered. I'm well aware that things are very dangerous here. Just aware that Hillary stands for this absolute inertia, the most dangerous one. So he saw it is more dangerous. Ah, okay, but both of them, because she's a cold warrior and so on, connected with banks, pretending to be socially progressive. Okay, so he's criticizing the Democratic Party of the United States. Yeah, and it's a, the relevant bipartisan critique. Um, Noam Chomsky. So Chomsky said it was the same point that people like him said about Hitler in the early 30s. Accelerationist left voice, acceleration left voice, labeled as regressive by Chomsky. So Chomsky deemed him regressive. He said, "Oh, okay. So Zizek thought that Trump would ignite. This is an important notion. I need to do Chomsky as well. This one said that Zizek's note that Trump will ignite some sort of an awakening was the same thing that was said about Hitler. And Hitler did spark an awakening, but also a Second World War and the Holocaust. And Holocaust was not just for the Jews, okay? It was for everyone who was not with the regime, but it was masqueraded as racism. Anybody who was not a part of the regime um, was enemy to the regime would be sent to working camps, to gas chambers, to execution, anybody. But that was masqueraded as racial, okay? You would say, okay, there are Aryan people, and if you're not Aryan, like, look at Hitler. Come on. He isn't like, come on. Visuals, like he doesn't stand in his own critique. But if you are not a part of the regime, then you can't say, well, if you're not a part of the regime, then you're a threat to the state. It's like, okay, but what is the regime about? Oh, well, they have this ideology. And that was a racist ideology. And back then, racism was a part, was descendant of eugenics, and many looked at nature and attempt to view nature and to understand nature and to understand the natures of people and view people as species and so on and so forth, and to completely misunderstand Darwin. But these things happen. Just lost in translation. 120 million Russians. I think 200 million Russians like this. So it's like that was a big number there. And so whoever was not a part of the ruling party was discarded to the gas chambers. It didn't matter if you were German, if you had, all your family ancestors were German. If you were suspected to be gay, if you were disabled, if you were suspected to support Jews or support foreigners who are not Aryan, not just Jews, anybody, then, you know, then you were doomed. And of course, the Jews have a history of being accused of communism and capitalism, and revolting and ruling the world. And I guess the disintegrated and exiled and decentralized nature of Jews tending to spread around the world was like they were accused of everything, but they're like they're just like they're everywhere, and so they were accused of everything, and it's like weird to people, and they're everywhere even when there is a state of Israel. So it's kind of, I guess that was weird to people. I don't know. Like it's very weird. Like why are the Jews persecuted? It's so weird. I think the Irish had a similar story, but I don't know the. I learned a bit about it, but I forgot, and I don't want to say by whom did I learn about it. So it was a good reason for me to forget and dissociate a bit. So these views were described as regressive by Chomsky. So Chomsky warns us to kind of like don't be too optimistic. Like, hey, that fascism could be in America. Uh, 2019, 2020, Zizek defended his views, saying the Trump's election created for the first time in I don't know how many decades a true American left. Okay, like I don't think Trump is Hitler, but I'm closer to Chomsky. Like there is no true American left right now. Like no, this sorry. Um, Citing the boost it gave to Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That was a Fata Morgana. But then when you come to drink the water, yes, that was a Fata Morgana. However, Zizek reported himself tempted by changing his position, saying that Trump is a little too much. A little too much. So that's interesting. It's like just interesting politics. But yes, social issues, Eurocentrism, immigration, LGBT movement have triggered criticism and accusation of bigotry. Oh, that's interesting. So he had, what was his views? Let's see. Multiculturalism or the cultural logic of multinational capitalism. Zizek criticized multiculturalism for privileging a culturally neutral perspective from which all cultures are disaffectedly apprehended in their particularity. Because of this distancing reproduces the racist procedure of the othering. Okay. He argues that fixation on particular identities and struggles corresponds to an abandonment of the universal struggle against global capitalism. But global capitalism is like I'm I'm not like I need to understand it deeper. A leftist plea for Eurocentrism, he argued that leftists should undermine the global empire of the capital not by asserting particular identities but through the assertion of new universality. Again, as we are now with Jupiter in Aries, thinking about the one his struggle, the European universalist view of égalité, Etienne Balibar's term, egalitarianism should be foregrounded, proposing a leftist appropriation of the European legacy. Elsewhere, he has also argued, defending Marx, that Europe's destruction of non-European tradition through imperialism and slavery has opened up the space for a double liberation, both from tradition and from European domination. Well, anybody who knows me a bit deeper on the capitalism socialism question would laugh and like, there you go again. This is a capitalist critique of Europe because capitalism is not about big corporations. It is about maintaining the centralized economy, in essence. And so you reach universality. You go back to Kant. You reach universality by digging into yourself because you are part of the divine, of the one truth. And so by looking into you, you reach by logical thinking, reasoning, you reach universality. Okay, so Zizek has not avoided that. He said, Kant was he marks Kant as the beginning of when philosophy happened for him. So So, you know, I think the mistake of calling capitalism, it's like, when it's like I would say, well, oh, Zizek is a communist because he quotes Marx. Like there is no essence to that. And when you understand, like when you actually read into capitalism, then you understand that you can criticize capitalism, but what happens in the United States is not the result of capitalism. Bipartisan country where you need to be a multi-billionaire to start a party is not capitalism. Guns that use for mass shooting by religious dogmas, nationalistic religious dogmas, what we see in recent mass shootings, um, and thank Diana Rose for kind of insinuating that which I can elaborate and she could not. Um, you know, sorry, Nazi gun use is not like this is not a Second Amendment. This is not what guns are for. Guns were for by the ideas that was represented by theorists like John Locke of a small state and the concept that it is mandatory for the citizens to protect themselves from the regime, so that citizens have equal power, are powerful enough to overthrow a regime that does not serve the greater, not the greater good is not a Lockean term, but that does not serve, is not in favor of the good, in favor of humanity. Okay, this is all God abiding. Okay, in God we trust, and the notion that we, the people, we need to be armed because we need to make sure that those in rule, that those we give the power to police us, to mitigate conflicts that we have, to arrange a structure that is supportive of us, we the people, we need to still maintain our responsibility and maintain our arms so that we can keep that regime, the small state, in check. Okay? So that nobody can evacuate you when you didn't pay your property taxes or you didn't have money to pay for rent, which is also property tax from a capitalistic point of view. If you live in the property, if you clean the property, if you care for the property, if you light incense in the property, if you do something for the property, the fruits of the property are your fruits. Nobody has the right to evacuate you from there. Okay? And this is where socialism and capitalism have a lot in common, because even communism, Marxism, was invented in an industrial era. Capitalism was conceived in an agricultural area, and the attempt to translate communism to agricultural society in Russia by Lenin was a bit askew, because capitalism is for agricultural. If I work the land, the fruits are of mine. Slavery, for example, is anti-capitalist. Women's right to vote, trans women's right to vote, is capitalist. And and therefore, this is the problem that I have with the critique of capitalism. Okay, a pragmatic critique of capitalism, that to practice capitalism, we have challenges to practice capitalism. We have challenges with helping the disabled, the sick, with organizing the structure. That we do need, on the one hand, we do need to pay something like a tax, or to make sure that there is an arrangement that takes care of these people, but we also need to make sure that we keep this arrangement, and we also have the guns for there. So if the welfare kidnaps children from, people who survived, try to escape violence, then we keep, we have the guns to keep that welfare in check and not put these children in human trafficking or whatnot, and send the parents to F off and say, oh, we take care of the children. We have working camps for the homeless people. This is also part of what the Second Amendment is for. I'm not saying it's easy, There are points, there are missing links. We can't rely on the invisible. Well, the invisible hand eventually is the hands that touches children in the wrong places. Eventually, okay. This is a criticism. This is a critique on the implication of capitalism. Um, and so a lot of the points that are mentioned here are actually capitalistic critique on the implementation of capitalism or the supposed implementation of capitalism in praxis. And I was criticizing socialism and capitalism at the same time when I said the word welfare. So yeah. So he said, ignoring how assimilation was also a project, also critiqued him for privileging the European Enlightenment Christian legacy as neutral, free of the cultural markers that fatally afflict all other religions. Okay. David Pavon Coulard, closer to Zizek, also criticized him. So this is a whole, let's take a look at transgender issues and see if there is something delineatable. 2016, the article "The Sexual is Political." Zizek argued that all subjects are like transgender subject in discord with the sexual position assigned to them. Okay. For Zizek, any attempt to escape this antagonism is false and utopian. Thus, he rejects both the reactionary attempt to violently impose sexual fixity and the post-gender, attempt to escape sexual fixity entirely. He aligns the latter with transgenderism. This is interesting. Which he claims does not adequately describe the behavior of actual transgender subjects who seek a stable place where they could recognize themselves, i.e., a bathroom that confirms their identity. Okay. He argues for a third bathroom as a general gender would represent the fact that both sexual positions insist on the unavoidable two-ness of sexual landscape, are missing something and thus fail to adequately represent the subject that takes them on. Okay, it's interesting because if you talk about binary gender definition and you're a trans man, you're not supposed to go to a general bathroom. You're supposed to go to the ladies' room. If you're trans woman, you're supposed to go to the ladies' room. Trans men, you're supposed to go to the man's room. But if you're gender fluid, sometimes ladies' room, sometimes men's room. But then there is gender queer, and so that wouldn't necessitate another bathroom. I don't know. Or what would be the problem with you for genderqueer to go to either bathroom like alternating from the bathrooms with the bathroom having no relation to what you do, or alternatively you could say, well, I have a penis, so I'll go where it's more comfortable for me to pee with a penis, and there I'll be. And that's not agenderism, it's just functional use of the social space. It's like, well, right now I need to poo, so I need to sit, so it doesn't matter for me. Or right now, it's more comfortable for me to do that, like on the penis peeing stand. So I'm gonna go to the penis peeing stand, like whoever I am, or whatever I have between my feet. It's like, oh, I feel like going there. Like probably the ideal would be that, but then that's difficult for people. In his 2019, transgender dogma is naive and incompatible with Freud. Okay. He argued that there is a tension in LGBTQ ideology between social constructivism or some kind of biological determinism, between the idea that gender is a social construct and the idea that gender is essential and pre-social. He concludes in the essay with the Freudian solution to this deadlock. Psychic sexual identity, oh hell, is a choice not a biological fact, but it is not a conscious choice that the subject can playfully repeat and transform. It is an unconscious choice which precedes the subjective constitution, which is formative, and subjectivity, which means that the change of this choice entails the radical transformation of the bearer of the choice. It's interesting, I think about um, the feminism. I think it was the feminism of the Pluto Virgo era. Um, and there was the type of feminism where women chose to be lesbian, or claim to have chosen to be lesbian for ideological purposes. And, you know, from the point of view of where we are today, I'm looking at that, and my thought was like, but if you are a lesbian, then okay. But if you're not a lesbian and you choose to be lesbian, then what about consent? What about sexual consent? Um, so, like, I've no idea. Like, I don't know what I think about this, to be honest. Um, this, like, his solution is interesting. As long as you don't try to deconstruct, like, as long as you don't try to transform someone's gender, because I think he leaves open the possibility of people transforming their gender by dictation, which I don't think it was what he was leading to. Like, I don't think he wanted people to be able to transform their gender or sexual identity according to the rules and the political party at rule, currently. Um, Criticize, okay. So he was accused of pathologizing transgenderism for writing about trans subjectivity with such assumed authority while ignoring the voices of trans theorists, academics, and activists entirely. Yeah. I don't know. Um, I'm trying to understand what was bothering him about this. Like, like, why, why do I care that it's incompatible with Freud? I mean, why did he care that it was incompatible with Freud? And I'm sorry, since he deals with sexuality, I'm gonna have to try and delineate. So Freud had, like, there was a very much Taurus Scorpio axis. Um, uh, it could be Lilith hard aspect, because if what bothered him was that it was incompatible with Freud, that tells me that he had some sort of a sexual complex. Okay, he talks about sexual complexes of people. I think it's fair to talk about that. Um, like, hey, I I am open about my stuff. Like, it's not like I'm going to put it in people's face, but it's not something that I would normally get into. But because a person talk about sexual philosophy, then it's like, yeah, I delineate that. It's fair that I delineate that. So I would expect a sexual complex, okay? And a sexual complex can be something like Lilith in hard aspected Lilith, okay? Like, from I'm gonna be honest, not honest, but how do you say it? Like, equal. Like, I'm not going to delineate him and without, so I'm going to disclose, for example, my Lilith in Aries, true Lilith in Aries. Um, is squaring my Rahu. Okay, so this discrepancy between my urges, or like bodily intuition, and where I'm heading in life. For example, my Rahu is in the fourth house, so it's foundational, it's elementary, it's also in Rohini Nakshatra, so it's like owning property. The ruler of my fourth is in the second, so real estate, owning a property, owning a home, owning a graveyard, I don't know. And my Lilith in Aries squares that. So it's like my bodily instincts are desirous of things that are in contradiction of that Rahu in Rohini. So I desire to be sexually free. And to be sexually free, being that, a value of me, and listening to my bodily instincts, there are things I don't enforce on myself, for example. Um, or something like that. Or I think about owning a house as a means to keep myself sexually free. So it's not owning a house by doing, like, for example, sugaring or sex work, but it's like, no, it's actually, with, for example, with if that was another aspect with Rari and Rohini, that could be like someone who tries to do, to use their body or even bodily instincts to kind of get money. And for me, that is in contrast. Okay, so there can be like a preconceived complex where if I'm sexually free, I can't make money or something like that. Or, even my satire, Sugar-Free Lemonade. That's what the name of the satire that I wrote in the academia. Okay, it's Sugar-Free Lemonade. And I didn't go for the money or for suing or for getting compensation. I go for freedom of speech. I need to speak. Okay, that. And this is a complex. Okay, it's a sexual conflict. It's the belief that having wealth somehow is in tension with having sexual freedom. Just the two. Okay, so with him, the fact that he thinks that that there is a problem, and this is the body. Okay, that he thinks there is a problem, that transgenderism is not in alignment with Freud, with the note like a sexual complex that he has there, and I think that's a Lilith stuff. Like Lilith is not free here. Something is tying Lilith up. So I don't know, where would Lilith be. It can be, Lilith can be on the Scorpio Taurus axis or just harshly aspected. Um, in response to the title, Mackenzie. Oh, in response to the title of the article, Mackenzie Ward had a t-shirt made with transgender flag and incompatible with Freud printed on them. That's a beautiful t-shirt. I'd like to have one. I mean, I totally should have an incompatible with Freud t-shirt. Never mind. Nou ja, Zizek defended, and I acknowledge the contribution of Freud to psychoanalysis, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Zizek defended his position in 2 follow-up pieces. Look how much attention he bent to that. Oh, wow. The first addresses purported misreadings of his position. The second is more sustained defense of his applications of Lacanian theory. Douglas Lane defended Zizek, claiming that the context make it clear that Zizek is not opposed to the struggle of LGBTQ people. Of course he's not. Like, I didn't interpret that in that way. I just think that he leaves a blind hole where people could practice imposing gender identity on people and using psychology to transform someone's gender identity or sexuality. And his theory leaves a like kind of a gap where people could lay into that. I don't think that gap is intentional, or that what he meant people to do with his theory. I just think that it leaves a gap, and then that gap is something that I criticize, just like I don't post to Jordan Peterson chart because he still supports victim blaming, and as long as we're in a reality where that is practiced, I don't think it is fair to do that, even though that's an interesting, like that there are other interesting things that he says. Um, but then I do Zizek. It's interesting. Instead of critiquing a phony liberal ideology that's on the term of LGBTQ struggle, a certain postmodern ideology that seeks to eliminate all limits, to eliminate all binaries, to go beyond the norm, because the imposition of a limit is patriarchal and oppressive. Okay, critique, I have to admit, because we just talk about the necessity of limitation to have freedom. Um, it's a good critique, but it's also unsustainable. Like previously in my videos, I called for um, queer theories that could be not replacing, but more adjusting, let's say, traditional Chinese medicine and shamanism, or being two-spirit to certain queer theories, while not erasing the experience of gender. So I totally I totally call in for non-binary theories of medicine, of spiritualism, of okay, what do we do instead of yin yang? Okay, of 0 and 1, plus and minus, whatnot. Uh, I think it's called for. I think it's interesting. I think it could be very much transforming for the psyche. If you think about the theories that govern Chinese medicine, they go from the Yellow Caesar book to thousands of, like, whoa, that could be an interesting, refreshing change that I don't even know if we have an equivalent in modernity to talk about. Even not even in modernity. It's like, when I say modernity, I mean like from ancient Greece. Yeah, that can be cool. I don't know what it is. So convention setters. Okay, I do. All of that is really nice. Do a little bit of no section. Well, okay. Let's go to the chart, and we are in 227.56. I'm going to. I cannot write a comment, so I'm going to put that as a screenshot as we go to the chart. Okay, 228. This is the chart of Slavoy Zizek. First time seeing it. We don't have the exact birth time, so I don't have the moon. I don't have the houses. I don't have the houses. But look at Lilith. We have Lilith in Pisces, in conjunct Saturn, hard as square in Moon, square in Uranus. Like I said, Lilith is bothered. One prediction, burnout. 1 point. Hardly aspected the Mars that is a strong Mars. So this Mars is in Aries. Mars in its own house. And this is in Aries. In its own domain. So Mars in the Mars decan of Aries. And he's harshly aspected though. Okay, so this is a person who could criticize, okay, in conjunction Saturn retrograde. So Mars is not retrograde, but Saturn is. So there is a half point for me. Okay, a harshly aspected but strong Mars. No Jupiter in Aries. His Jupiter is actually in Capricorn, which is considered a fallen Jupiter, Saturn ruled Jupiter. Again, but it in conjuncts Uranus. Mercury harshly aspects Chiron. Let's take a look at that again. Mercury harshly aspects Chiron. No Pluto Mercury hard aspect, so this is not born. Okay, I didn't get that, was incorrect. No, Pluto is actually trine in Chiron and sextile in Neptune, and that's that. It's just trine in Chiron. It's not making anything, but he is a Pluto in air in Leo, and Pluto retrograde. So Pluto in Leo, like I said, a person that could be powerful. I don't have his midheaven. I don't have his houses. Um, I talked about the eyes. I talked about the luminary there. I see the moon opposing Uranus, trine in Saturn. Why did I talk about the luminary? And then the moon squares Venus and Mars. Mercury in Pisces. Mercury in Pisces, Neptune in Libra. That okay, and here's Ketu is on the Aries Libra axis, which we are approaching. Um, what more can I make of it? So also no no Jupiter Mercury connections. So this one was also wrong. Jupiter and Saturn ruled signs, so then his philosophy is affected by the past. It's but it's yeah, it's just Saturn. It's Jupiter in Capricorn, so it's very confined, dogmatic. Okay, and unfortunately quite patriarchal. So yeah, so that yes, that's a bit of an afflicted Jupiter here. Although Jupiter does harmonize with Lilith and with Mars. This allows him, for example, to criticize, to have a solid criticism of the army. But also being militant. Okay. And yeah, the moon here is somewhere between being Jupiter ruled to being Saturn ruled. Why did I talk about his eyes? Oh, because it's the expression of emotions. So, no, I don't see the Mercury moon thing either. But Mercury in a water sign. So it's not a Mercury moon or moon in a Mercury sign, but it's Mercury in a water sign. And water sign is about our feelings and having no words to express our feelings. Although I would expect a Mercury in Pisces. Oh no, that would be a moon in Pisces. That's correct. So we have both the moon. If the moon is Saturn ruled, then the moon is limited in its ability to feel. Like there is a constraint on the emotions. And Mercury in Pisces uh, needs finds difficult to express something verbally. So you can use imagery. And again, Mercury Pisces is also a skill in filmmaking. They talked about filmmaking and the eyes, and I did it. This is right. This is right. And I talked about filmmaking having to do with the eyes and having to do with the skill. And I thought that I believe the moon is Saturn ruled, but I'll never know, because when in the opposition to Uranus and Gemini. Okay, again for filmmaking, film you need a luminary that reflects something. Where's the sun? Where's the sun? It's here, right? It's in Pisces. I think sun is Pisces. What, the 29th of Pisces, huh? That's the sun here. So we have a square between the sun and the moon. There's a connection between them. It's a tension connection. And both of them hard aspect Uranus. Okay? That tells me that there is a manifestation of technology to do with the luminaries, to do with light, the technology of light. And you need to have this connection to have filmmaking, and the technology is Mercury ruled, with Mercury in Pisces. So this is very much filmmaking oriented. I don't know how to delineate the philosophy here because, well, Jupiter, Saturnian, Jupiter, so I feel delineated that. By the way, the Jupiter trining, sextiling Lilith, the philosophy of sexuality, philosophy of gender, um, this can be, for example, there can be a complex around Lilith, but there can be the ability to theorize that complex, okay? And the necessity for something to be compatible with Freud. Who is Freud? Freud is a traditional psychoanalyst, the father of psychoanalysis, okay? So very traditional worldview here. And so we have a harmonious aspect. He deals with his own Lilith traditionally. It's like views of, okay, I view my complexes, let's say, I don't know, my sexual issues or my perversions, I view them in a Freudian light, and I use the Freudian tools that Freud gave me to deal with my Lilith or with my charges that are fluid and liquid, huh? Lilith in Pisces. Yin rule sign, by the way. Sorry for the binary Cartesian binary stuff. Okay. Like nothing was more gay than what the movements that I was like. The camera is not on, but nothing was more gay than my mannerism when I said that. Um, Chiron, Chiron in Sagittarius. In Sagittarius rules our worldview. So there's a wound around the worldview. And Chiron and Mercury square. There can be something about the speech. I think when I heard Zizek speaking, I think there was something. It's not a speech impairment. It's just that he doesn't speak so clearly. So that can be. But then Chiron, Jupiter ruled, and Jupiter is like considered fallen in Capricorn. Um, being aware of the limitations in his worldview. Chiron, limitations to the worldview, but there is also critique of, yeah, there is something to heal about that worldview. He could have a teaching around ailments or around medicine. I don't know if he did have that. Definitely he's teaching about, transgenderism. It's like he was trying to say something that I think like probably there is an essence that we do need to address there, but he was using two traditional means to say that, two traditional thinkers to say that, and therefore falling, leaving the such a gap in this worldview around transgenderism. But that's just that. Did he have essays on technology? Like he talked about how to watch the media, critique of media. Okay. What else do I see here? There is no connection between Saturn and Mercury, but there is a Saturn-Mars connection, which is an inconjunct. As you can probably guess, I'm extremely tired, but I like doing these episodes. Um, so I don't have houses. That I cannot do it with houses. Now there's the big question: why was I called to talk about Zizek? So we have Jupiter in Aries, so in the first degrees of Aries, and this is where his Mars is. Don't know his ascendant. And we are heading towards shifting axis. I was predicting his Rahu Ketu to be on the Scorpio Taurus axis. Again, wrong. So I have some right predictions, which is the weirdly like aspected strong Mars, but it's not retrograde. The harshly aspected Lilith, the connection between the luminary and Mercury. Okay, so in here it's Uranus in a Mercury ruled sign. It's like Uranus even bigger. Um, the connection between Saturn and his undertaking. So in this case, it's a luminary, it's the moon. Um, Pluto in a solar ruled Pluto, so that was still correct. I predicted him to be a late Pluto. He was born earlier. Um, Pluto trine Chiron, very interesting one. Um, the Pluto trine Chiron is definitely, it's kind of a sort of like unusual psychoanalysis. Interesting than Neptune in Libra. Venus ruled Neptune. Okay, but I don't know what was this Neptune doing. Was it with his Rahu? I have to do this again. Rahu, Ketu. I am laughing at myself, and I'm like, but I am laughing at myself. Rahu, Ketu symbols. No, it's this one. No, there are the symbols. Rahu, Ketu. Come on. Here it is. Ketu. So Rahu is like this. Ketu, back to here. This is Rahu. I hope. I just looked at it. No, again. Rahu, Ketu. This is Ketu, is down. Rahu is these two up. Rahu is like a U. So Rahu is like a U. Yes, this is Rahu. Neurodivergence. So he has Rahu in Libra. Um, and now we're going to have Ketu in Libra. Oh, no, yeah, I don't think that that's the thing, but it's still an interesting axis to look at. I don't see Israel and Ketu making any aspects. Um, so yeah, so Jupiter on his Mars. That could be a reason. Oh, Pluto is on his Jupiter. Pluto, Pluto is on his Jupiter. Okay, that could be a reason. Like I'm thinking about the time. This is a Saturn day when I began this presentation. Saturn. Oh yeah, Saturn in Virgo. Nah. The moon. Oh no, the moon. The moon is about here probably. So the moon approaching is Jupiter. Um, in conjuncting is Uranus. Yeah, I don't see something very timely. Now let's do like the sort of like on the spot synastry. So let's see how am I biased or not biased when viewing his chart. So his Pluto is in my sixth house, some person I talk about when I'm at work. And I'm also at the house of my parents who have their Pluto in my sixth house. I write about this actually, to be honest. Um, what else? Well, it brings Chiron to my Ketu. Actually, is that correct? Yes, Chiron to my Ketu. Uranus on my Juno. Okay. I was thinking about my Juno today, but a position opposition to Neptune. There's also quasi opposition to, yeah, weird aspect to Uranus. Because I have Uranus in Sag. Neptune, Rahu in my 8th house. Meh. Um, Saturn in my 7th house. Okay. Like something in Virgo, Saturn in Virgo. That's interesting. Jupiter is on my lot of fortune, I think. With Pluto there. Pisces. Would I have anything harshly aspecting? No, I don't have anything harshly aspecting is Neptune, I think. My Jupiter harshly aspects Neptune, but it's not a Mercury or something. Um, Pluto in Leo, well, it just squares my Sun, but then again, it's not like a Mercury thingy. So it doesn't seem like, yeah, it's Venus around my ascendant, it's Lilith around my ascendant, Mercury. Yeah, I don't see any particular bias here. Um, I, well, I do think he's interesting. I do think it's important to exemplify why his theory of or his argument against gender is problematic politically, and not because of political correctness, but because of the implication of believing that leaves a place for the psychologist or the psychotherapist to coerce patients sexually, basically, in the name of ideology. And of course, this is not what he claims. Okay, it's not like Peterson, who actually said that women should take responsibility of being raped at work or partial responsibility for being raped at work. It's like it's not that mindfuckery, but because these theories leave a place for people to practice unethical psychotherapy or rapist psychotherapy, to understand that even though this is not what he says, uh, his theory does leave a place for people to argue that psychotherapists can or should uh, transform the unconscious facets of people's sexuality and transform their sexuality to be drawn to certain other genders and so on and so forth. So he was pro LGBTQ. This is important to mention. He was pro LGBTQ. He was just unsure of the ways of the people or transgender people to achieve the freedom that they're seeking. He was trying to see how can LGBTQ people be genuinely free and not just formally free. Okay, and see, because what he saw was LGBTQ as formal freedom. Unfortunately, this theory leaves a gap, and he was like, this is the incompatibility with Freud leaves a gap for people to think that you can transform the subconsciousness of people and then have them be completely free to choose their sexuality, which will practically be displayed as being raped into coercive sex with people that they're not drawn into, not attracted to, in the name of whichever political identity is ruling. This is the political atmosphere that we live in, and this is my practical critique of Zizek. I do not fundamentally criticize him because the concept of being able to choose relative to your sexuality or gender, having choice sexually, is not a bad thing. Okay? For example, if you're attracted, let's say I'm a straight woman attracted to men, or whatnot, and I want to be able to enjoy sexuality with women too. So transforming, looking into the constructs of my sexuality and my subconsciousness, and liberating my subconsciousness to be able to choose if I want to have sex with a woman or if I want to have sex with a man, being able to enjoy them both, it's not a bad thing. Um, but also, practically, what's being uh, put to praxis is not, hey, there is something that you don't have access to, but if you did somehow have access to, there's another area of consensual sex that you could explore. That's not how it's being put to practice. It's being put to practice as, well, you can choose your sexuality, so go ahead, sleep with a man. You're a woman, sleep with a man. You're a man, sleep with a woman. Not only sleep, marry a woman. Huh? and that, unfortunately, we're still living in the days where those kind of practices are being practiced, and therefore we cannot delve into even exploring the ideas that Zizek brought, whether they're true or not. Okay, um, because there's nothing necessarily harmful in alchemy trying to comprise gold, even if it's impossible. It might yield chemistry, but there is something fundamentally wrong in raping someone to a committed sexual relationship or to sexual relationship that they're not, like, that there's not in alignment with their bodily needs. So, so this is what I have to say about it, and I think it should be understood and be treated with compassion, because this is not a person who is anti-LGBTQ or transphobic person. No, this is not the case. This is not what I get from him. It's just actually the others, the other opposition of that is a person who's arguing for fundamental freedom and not just formal freedom. And that was what he was trying to say and trying to find the words, but unfortunately, the way it will be executed is the opposite of what he intends to, and therefore, like, we cannot explore this, we cannot talk about this currently, because we have to politically argue that you don't choose your sexuality in order to be freed from sexual oppression, unfortunately. Like, and I'm talking about the logical position, okay, logical practical position, whether you can or cannot choose your sexuality. um, like, if you unleashed your unconsciousness or something like that, it's not, like, it's not even the point. It's like you cannot even explore that, because that would be exploited to rape and coercion, and not to sexual liberation and sexual joy, consensual sexual joy. Nou ja, anything more I have to say about this chart? Mm, 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 mm. I don't know. Should probably look at it further. I don't see any. From an air view, I don't see any biases that I may have in presenting him. So I think I have a pretty good clarity regarding him. Um, his Neptune does not interfere with my Mercury, does not interfere with my Venus. So I don't idealize him. I also don't devalue him. So I don't have, like, internal complexes that could make me, hate him or detest him or have like aversion to him. His Pluto squares my Sun, but this is energy that I'm living with, with my luminary caregivers, and so it's not something that I'm not used to. Um, yeah, so like, I don't have an intense reaction to him. I think he's interesting, and I'm very, very happy to have done this episode. Um, so he's an interesting thinker. Uh, yeah. Yes, I think it's very good, very, like, very, very good. I'm, like, in very good position to delve into this chart. So it's like I'm not too bothered by it in any way. And it's Jupiter on my lot of fortune, with Pluto. Well, Jupiter squares my Mercury, but okay, like, that's just like the position where I can say, well, this I criticize, this I agree with, this is so, this is so. It's more an intellectual. It's not like a God, like a Pluto thing where I get like, oh, I can't, this is a dangerous thinker, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that was Slavoy Zizek. So I'm interested to see his documentaries. Like, I'm interested to know more about the person. Again, I do these episodes about people that I don't know anything about. because that's the fun, and this is also where I get educated, where you get educated with me, and where I can do predictions, and the way I can integrate my varied fields of interests, thinkers, scientific fields, philosophy of science, technology, in this case also filmmaking, astrology, of course, podcasting, psychology, and politics, and so on and so forth, and just enjoy the ride. So, um, very grateful for this episode, and you can watch my content, subscribe. I will link to my Patreon if you happen to have the money to feed me. Um, so yeah, so that can be great. And was noch? Leave comments. Okay, so 228 is where the joy begins. I need to write that in the comment section. I can't write it now. I'll write it in the episode. And do watch the episode that I recorded. I think it's called like Astrology Talk or Messy Astrology Talk, not Messy the player, like Messy vlog, Messy blog, something like that. It's messy and it's beautiful, and it does correlates, like it did lead up to this episode. So yeah, 3 hours. I did it. I did not even go to the bathroom. You know what? In the academia, I would not be able to do it without bathroom. I think I'm ready to be a public speaker. So that was a great cocoa. And on my next cocoa, I probably want to do Spirit of Matter of Martin Heidegger. And I definitely want to read Martin Heidegger is that Martin Heidegger? In German. Um, so that's probably coming up next. And Habermas. I don't know if I didn't do Habermas, because I did look at his chart one day. I remember there was something with Mercury that I predicted that was right, but then I don't know if I did Spirit of Matter back then, or I just did it for my personal joy. So I'll probably do Habermas. So Habermas and Martin Heidegger and probably Kant. I probably did Kant, I'm not sure. And René Descartes. No, but I looked at René Descartes' chart. So I'm not sure I have anything to add about René Descartes, but I might do something around that. So, Merry Christmas. Maybe even very timely. Merry Christmas. Slavoy Zizek chart. Very like relevant to what everybody is looking into right now. Happy Hanukkah. What's your special for Hanukkah and Christmas? A Slavoy Zizek 3 hours episode preceding, like, which had another episode of me talking about random stuff with nothing to do with Christmas or Hanukkah or the New Year. Happy New Year. But Aries and Jupiter. So yeah,